Can you tell me what is class in JavaScript?
Class. Class is like it represents the real life entity. Like if you want to represent something in a program, like we all use class, it has some properties and some methods that is related to that class. For example, if we have a vehicle class, it has some name, it has the build, the year, and we let's say let's assume like we have like a method called start engine, like so we can group these inside a one class. So we generally, in my experience, I usually worked on functional programming. I haven't much used class in my programming, but yeah, I think this class represents an entity we can relate to.
Okay. So in JavaScript there is class. So does it mean that
Yes.
JavaScript is an object-oriented programming language?
uh, I think we can apply object-oriented programming to JavaScript as well.
But is it an object-oriented programming language?
I think unlike C++ is a object-oriented programming
Yeah.
language. So JavaScript, I guess, I'm not sure. Like, it is a single thread with synchronous language. We can apply class concepts in JavaScript, but I'm not sure about that.
Okay, no worry. Yeah. Uh, okay, like can you tell me difference between null and undefined in JavaScript?
Yeah, okay. Now, for example, undefined is a like placeholder when the it represents the value is undefined. It's not defined. So, for example, if I have a variable, like I declared with variable a, so the JavaScript will hoist this variable and assign it as undefined. So whenever we try to access that variable, we get an undefined. So is null is basically like we are telling that value of that is null. It's something. It's unlike undefined. Undefined is the values we are not defining it. So JavaScript, it's like a placeholder. So until the initialization happens, it is undefined for the time being.
Okay.
Null, for example, if we can assign it to a null, it's not a good general practice to assign some variable to undefined.
Mm-hmm.
So it is possible that we can assign some variable a equal to undefined, but it's not a good practice. Like, but we can, but the other, like we can assign something to a null, so that means that value is null. It is not the empty kind of represent that.
Okay. Have you used global variable in JavaScript?
Global variables.
Yeah.
I mean, like we declare it on top of it so that we can access it everywhere inside our program. Is that right?
Okay.
Uh, so, like, I'm not sure about like what is a global variable. Like,
Yeah, I got it. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Do you know what is closure in JavaScript?
yeah, closure a function bundles with its parents like lexical environment forms a closure. So I'll explain it in a very simple manner. Like, so let's say we have a function called outer. Inside that we have a variable x equal to 10. Let's say x equal to 10, and we have a function inside that outer function, which let's call it inner function inner. Like, so if I try to access that x variable inside that inner, so we have access to that x variable. it's due to the closure. So the inner function forms a closure with the lexical environment of the outer. So it has reference to the x variable. So whenever, even after the execution of the outer function, so the inner function has access to the x variable. It's due to the closure of. So it can be helpful in, let's say, function currying, or let's we want to create some custom function. Like let's say like we want to, I have a function called add. So it basically does like to add two numbers. So let's say function add x comma y, like it returns x plus y. So I want to write a curried version of that function. Let's say like function, and that takes only one variable x, and inside another function we will declare another function, so which takes another variable y. So the inner function has access to the x variable due to the closure. So we can write a curried function in that return x plus y inside that inner function.
Okay. Do you know what is
So
EP?
I can demonstrate.
Yeah, I got it. What is EP?
Yeah. I didn't get it.
IIFE. Yeah, immediately invoke function. Do you know?
Immediately invoked function. So like so let's say we put
Immediately
that
invoke
in a
function
bracket.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we put that inside a bracket, and so it will immediately call that function. We don't have to, let's declare a function, some function, and we need to call that function to execute that function. If we use that syntax, like it will immediately called.
So how
even
it is?
before.
Yeah, you told like you will be writing inside a function. So like then how it is
Yes.
differentiate like difference from like normal function?
So we wrap this inside a bracket, and
Can you tell me the need of IFE?
the need, it's like, so we want to execute some logic even before there some things are happening, so we can use this to execute that logic. So let's say we want some value that received from this function to be used inside the next stage of our program, so we can utilize this.
Okay. Do you know hosting, right?
Yes.
Is let is hosted?
Yes, let is also hoisted, but the difference between let and var hoisting is like variable is hoisted and also initialized with undefined keyword. So let is hoisted, but it is not initialized with the undefined. So whenever we try to access a variable declared with let, even before its initialization, we get a reference error. For the time being, it will be in a temporal dead zone. So that's why we getting the reference error. Const is also similar.
Do you know what is what is the advantage of arrow function?
Yes, arrow function and normal function differ slightly. The arrow function doesn't have this. So this keyword inside an arrow function points to the other function has the value of this inside an normal function refers to the where the function is called. The arrow function doesn't have that this context, so it points to the enclosing bracket. So let's say like we have a arrow function inside an object, and so if we try to access, let's say like the object is a person, it has name, age, and and a method get name or print name, something. So we can either use an arrow function or a normal function So if we use an arrow function and try to print that name, let's say console log, hey, this is this dot name, and so we can't really access that object dot name. It will point to the global object. So it differs in that way. So the advantage is where we don't want to use this, we can use the arrow function. Otherwise, we can use the normal function if you want to reference the this of that object.
Okay. Is JavaScript, like you told, JavaScript is multi-threaded, right?
No, it's a single-threaded synchronous language.
Okay. How you generally do async calls in JavaScript?
So we have a mechanism called event loop. So it will handle this asynchronous operations gratefully. So let's say it's a single-thread language, so it's a synchronous language. So JavaScript can only execute one thing at a time. So what if we want to do something, wait for some operations to finish? So it has a call stack and a callback queue. And whenever we see an asynchronous, or let's say an async function, so it all fetches some data after this many seconds of time. So if we see that in the first of all, a global execution context will be created. So if we see this line, so we'll put this in some other part of the JavaScript environment, and then from there we'll push into the callback. Then again, the event loop checks whether the call stack is empty or not. Then the event loop, if the call stack is empty, the event loop will push that into the call stack and execute. So in case of like async and await, we have one more layer, like a micro task queue. So whenever an asynchronous, let's say we have a set timeout, like it will directly move to the callback and wait there and until the call stack is empty. So when the call stack is empty, the event loop will check whether something is there in the callback queue or not. If something is there, like the call event loop's job is to push that into the call stack and execute that. So if we have a set timeout and a promise or something, so the promise will go to the micro task queue, not the callback queue. So the micro task queue has a more higher priority than the callback queue. So the JavaScript engine the event loop will firstly check if something is there on the micro task queue, if the call stack is empty. So if there's something is there on the micro task queue, it will first push that into the call stack and execute that. Then only it will go to the callback queue. This is how JavaScript handles asynchronous operations. So it is a single-threaded synchronous language, so it can manage the asynchronous operations like this, using that with the help of event loop.
Okay. Can you tell me the 3 states of promise?
It has a pending, resolved, and rejected. These are the 3 states of a promise.
Okay. So yeah.
Okay. No, you can ask those.
Okay. Do you know? Okay, you told what is the 3 state? Pending,
fulfilled, rejected.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Yeah. So do you know what is promise chaining?
Promise chaining.
Yeah.
I think it is. Let's say. Is it like a callback? Yeah, I get it. So for example, if we have a scenario where I want to, let's take an example of a cart. Like e-commerce website. Like, so for example, if I add something into the cart and then I go to the checkout, so then after the check, let's say we perform some operation like check the availability or something, so it returns a promise, then only we can go to the payments. So we can change these operations using dot then operator. So let's say we add to the cart, then we go to the payment. So it's like chaining, we are chaining the promises.
Okay.
So it's not like if you use a callback, it will, what will say, it will, the responsibility of the parent, it has only one function. So add to cart. So the payments, to go to payments will be the responsibility of that add to cart function. If you use a promise, it's not like that. Like, so we can, it will be easy to debug. And so like, let's say add to cart dot, then we do something, some logic with that given data, and then we go to the payments. So it will be easy to debug, and if there are some bugs happening, so it will be really easy for us to find that bug and which part of that promise. So if we use a callback, it will be different. So it will be nesting these callbacks. So it will be really hard to debug all these scenarios.
Okay. So how inheritance is achieved in JavaScript?
Inheritance, we can basically, inheritance means, are you talking about the prototype inheritance or like the normal inheritance, like in the object or in the program?
Correct.
So the prototype inheritance, right?
Yeah.
So like, let's say every object, everything inside JavaScript has a prototype attached to it. So we can access, so let's say we have a function. So we can access that prototype by like function dot underscore underscore proto dot underscore underscore. So it is an object. It is an object in JavaScript. All object has also a prototype. So for example, in the case of an array, the prototype refers to that array dot prototype object. So that object refers to that object, prototype refers to the object dot prototype. So that object dot prototype will be referring to the null. So let's say we have array. So we have these all many methods like array dot push. So these all implementation is inside this prototype object. So that's why we are able to use these methods, array.push, array.length, and all. So it's not a good practice to modify this prototype, but we can actually do some modification, but it's not advisable like, in any means.
Okay.
So it basically means like the inheritance, like for example, if you try to access something, so if that is not in that first prototype, it will try to check the other. It's like an inheritance, like try to access that inside another prototype, what do you call out of a prototype or something. Like.
Okay.
So it forms an inheritance. It's a prototype chain forms.
Okay, prototype chain. Okay.
It stops the execution when we point to the null.
Okay. So, like I have given you a small snippet in the code. Can you tell me what will be the output? Console log 1 plus 1. 1 is.
Yeah. I think since the last one is a string, it will also convert that into a string. So it will be, I think, string 11, I guess. I think this will be the output.
What will be the output of this one? 4 divided by 2. Well, 2 is.
Yeah, 4 divided by 2. 2 is a string. 4 is a number. Try to divide it by 2 is a string. I'm not sure. It might be an undefined. Like we can't. I'm not sure, but I think it will be an undefined.
No. Okay, right. Okay. Let's have some regular questions. Okay.
Okay.
Can you tell me what is two-way binding in Angular?
Okay. So let's say let's take a component example. So we have a template and the logic, the component.ts file. So whatever. So we are trying to show some variable inside in a view. Like so, let's say like some count or something. So if we try to change that inside the component, it also reflect in the view as well. If we trying to change from the view, it will reflect in the components of variable. So we can achieve this by using an NG model. So it will enable this two-way binding. So let's say we have a div. Let's put an input field. Take an example of an input field. So let's say we give ng model and that search term. So if we have that search term inside our component.ts file, if I want to change the search term, let's say when I click clear, like I want to set the search term to an empty string. So I can do it inside that component.ts file, that logic I can. Also, if I try to clear that input field in the view, so it will also reflect that in the code. So it's like, unlike React, Angular has this ability to bind this data two ways. So whatever we do it in the view, it reflects in the logic, and whatever we do it in the logic, it reflects in the view.
Okay, do you know difference between a constructor and ng on it?
Yeah, constructor. So every class as a constructor. So we generally use this constructor to define these services, inject the services, and we use the ng on in lifecycle hook to initialize the data. So ng on init is a lifecycle hook, and it is called after the first ng on changes. And if there are no input or like output bound properties, the ng on init will be the first lifecycle hook that will be called inside Angular. Okay. So it's not a good practice to do the heavy initialization or data intensive task in the constructor, but we can use this ng on init instead to do this task. Generally, we use it to like inject these services to inside the constructor. We don't do much of other tasks in the constructor.
Okay. Do you know how you can retry an API call automatically if there is an error response from the API?
Retry an API. Okay. So let's say like we are using an http.get. I'm trying to get a data. So we can always use a try catch. Like so, if we try that fails, we can cast the error, and again we can call that inside the catch. But there might be some other much better approaches, but I'm not sure. Like,
okay,
I might have to refer it and see.
Have you used JWT token-based authentication?
I have used it in one of my personal projects very long back. Like I haven't used it in my work, so I'm forgotten the implementation. It's like JSON web token. So we have that token. We check. I forgot the implementation.
Okay.
I've used it in one of my personal project when I was in college. Like, so to authenticate to the login, I used it with C.NET and Angular.
Okay.
So,
Do you know like the different parts of JWT token?
JW token, different parts. You mean in that token?
Yeah.
So it's like a unique value kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when we decode it, we get some data. So I remember like creating an SHA 256 hash to decode it or something. I'm not
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
remembering it.
So, have you used RxJS?
Yes, RxJS we use it in our daily coding.
Yeah. Can you tell me?
It's a reactive extension of JavaScript. It basically means like it's a better way of handling these asynchronous operations. Like, for example, let's say like the main concept like observer and observable. So like an observable is like a stream that emits data whenever the observable emits something. So like
Yeah.
we can the observer is like a object with these methods like next, catch, or uh, so it's like a better way of handling asynchronous operations. Like we have many operators to use it inside. So let's say like an asynchronous operations that returns an observable. So we can subscribe to it and we can use it inside our like components or templates. So we can, the Angular also provide the async pipe. So if we use an async pipe inside a template, so we don't really have to subscribe to it don't have to deal with the unsubscribing from that observable to avoid memory leaks. So the async pipe will also manages all of this. So I think the main operators we use, I use a fork join a lot inside my work, and fork join, switch map. These operators I use a lot.
Okay.
We also use the subjects as well. Like, so if you want to create our own implementation of some observable patterns.
Okay. What is like what is the difference between template driven form and reactive form?
Okay, template driven and reactive forms. So I think the way we create a form, so if it is like a very simple form, it is always go with the template driven. Like if we have like very less logic to manage and all, it would be always better to go with the template driven. So in the reactive form, it is like build. It is very useful for building very complex forms. So the way we initialize this form and all are different. Like we use the form group, form control, and dot set value, pass value, etc. to manage, update the form value. We can also perform validations using the reactive form. So I think it is the different.